Hello, Yeva is here from simplyyeva.com. Today I'm doing a short video to answer 3 questions that have been coming up from ESL teachers like you. So if you would like to know how to engage your students in speaking English, what kind of writing activities work well for younger English learners, and tips on adapting English instruction in multi-level classroom, stick around. Okay, so let's dive right in. Question number 1, how can my students practice speaking more? First of all, I wanted to say speaking may look a little different whether you are an ESL or an EFL teacher. An ESL, English as a Second Language teacher, works with students who are learning English in a country where majority of people speak English. Therefore, students are immersed in the language environment and receive a lot of input for at least 7 hours a day, that is if they go to school. Therefore, speaking is a survival skill for them, and if they want to communicate with people who do not share their first language, they speak. EFL, English as a foreign language, is a bit different. In this case, students learn English in a country where the majority language is other than English, and therefore their entire life in school is in some other language, and English is just another class. It may be difficult to engage students in an English conversation because there might be not much or not enough intrinsic motivation, depending on the age group. But it is also important to keep in mind that to begin speaking another language requires some functional knowledge of how the language works, as well as self-confidence and openness. So regardless of what your situation is, here are a couple of things that I have found useful in my classes. So first of all, the teacher has to make a decision that English only will be spoken in the classroom. And it may sound very strict, but it does work because the students will try to push the envelope no matter what. And if the teacher wavers a little bit, then they will push again, and it may seem you might lose the course. So in an EFL classroom, when you have absolute beginners, it's okay to incorporate their first language as well as in ESL until they get the basics, but modeling the language that the students are learning is essential. So when the teacher sets the clear rules that English is expected in the classroom and sticks to those rules, students will follow. It can be an uncomfortable feeling for both parties, but it does work. I remember when I was learning German, I had a German teacher who only spoke German in class. In the beginning, I could not understand anything, and I already had some German under my belt. But as time passed, with a little bit of help from my friends and the fact that the teacher incorporated body language, visuals, and spoke German, really helped. So this technique might be tiring in the beginning, but if you set the expectation and you follow through, the students will come with you. Second, and in my opinion, very important aspect of engaging your students in speaking English is ensuring that they actually know that they're making progress. So think about it. Human mind tends to focus on negative aspects of life. I don't know, it's probably a survival skill of some sorts, but how many times has someone asked you how you did and you say, meh, I think I'm not talented in English or in math or home decor, whatever the topic is. So we tend to beat ourselves down when it is harder than we want it to be, and we beat ourselves down when we make a mistake, especially when we learn a language, because there's a certain expectation of somebody learning a language. So if you can devise a plan on how to show your students progress, that would be an amazing and very useful thing for you to do. You can do a self-assessment sheet that they can fill out every week, for example. So you will give a sheet to the student, and the student will fill it out, say, hey, you know, I understood everything that the teacher said. I was able to say something. I feel great, or I feel not very great about my English. And you also fill out the similar sheet for that student, and then you compare. So then you sit down talk about it and think about it. It's already a topic of conversation. But when you point out to the students that they have come farther than they expected, that really gives them a boost and they do want to move forward. So it is very crucial, in my opinion, to keep the students both accountable and also motivated, and to show them that they are moving forward. And finally, do not underestimate high interest topics. Get to know your students and their interest, and whenever possible, whenever you have time, engage in something that makes their world go round, and they will naturally start speaking. I've seen spontaneous conversations pop up with students who thought that they don't know any English, and all of a sudden somebody mentions their favorite song or a favorite soccer team or a movie that they just watched, and they engage in a conversation as best they can, and that is like the best that the teacher can witness. So these would be my tips for speaking. Now, moving on into question number 2. What writing activities can we use with younger English learners? Research shows that writing is closely linked with reading. That is, if a student is an avid reader, they will have an easier time writing. And if a student likes to read in their first language, chances are that those skills will transfer into their second language. That said, it is important to keep in mind that many young learners, especially kindergarten, first and second grades, will not have fully developed their first language and reading and writing in it, and therefore these strategies may not be transferable. So what activities can we use when teaching English to younger children? So children are naturally very creative and they like to make friends as a rule. So any group collaborative activity works really well, okay? Working with their peers allows them to brainstorm in a no pressure environment and to come up with ideas which can later be developed into, vocabulary, new vocabulary words and new topics to write about. Whenever you present a topic, it is best that topics are engaging and intrinsically motivation for younger kids, such as friends or pets or favorite activities. Kids really like to share what they like to do, and when they enjoy the activity, then it's easier to show them how they can write a story about it. The students who are still learning how to write, encourage them to draw, and when they know some words or letters, they can label those things that they draw. You also can sit down with them and help them express their thoughts, and you can help them write those thoughts down, or you can scribe for them, and that is perfectly fine because you will be modeling the writing activity. Vocabulary and letter tracing is great. Creating little books is a favorite among elementary school students. Also, remember to share the student work. I know that the schools that I work at, they display student work in the hallways, and when I go to see my little friends, we walk and they say, oh, look at this. This is what I wrote. And this is what my friend wrote. And they stop and they look at the pictures. They look at what their friends write. They're really proud of their work and they really like what their friends do. So if you can display their work and rejoice with them, that is a great motivator. Now, when the students have some basic words under their belt, a word jumble activity is a great start to begin writing. So you can split the class into groups, or you can split the students into pairs depending on how many students you have. So each group gets a set of cards with simple words that can be made into a sentence. And it is important to have not a worksheet where the students put the words in a sentence, but a set of cards, because that is manipulative and they engage in the activity not only with their brains but also kinesthetically. So they work together to make sentences, and then they can copy the sentences into their notebook. You can also give letters, and students can make words with given letters as well. They can come up with words for specific categories that you have on the board. Let's say food, animals, and colors. Always making it a competition might be a good idea because it gives students motivation. And finally, do not underestimate the value of a good story. Stories can be incorporated with both young and old. So you can give students a first sentence of the story and ask them to complete it. Or you can read a story and have them create an alternate ending. It all depends on the student's language proficiency and on their personality and on your class makeup. So in an activity like that, so depending on the level, they can either write words that would fit the story or sentences, or your classmate can scribe it for them. So these are some of the activities that you can do for writing for younger learners. And finally, final question for today is, how can I adapt my lessons to multi-level learners? So a lot of English classrooms have students of varied ages and levels of English. And this may be practical in some cases, but it truly is a challenge for a teacher. So while each teaching situation is different, here are a few tips that may help ease the nagging question, am I reaching everyone? So there's no one-size-fits-all solution because what fits everybody doesn't fit anybody. So it's important but the first thing you can do is to determine students' needs, okay? So while some of them may need to learn basic English, the verb to be, the prepositions of place and time, others may require more advanced vocabulary and grammar, and still others may need lots of practice in writing and speaking, okay? So you determine the needs first, and then you can go from there. So in a multi-level class, grouping is very important. You can group your students by like ability. For example, those that are at the same proficiency level can work together, and the benefit is that similar needs are addressed and students can negotiate meaning. Now, you can also group students by cross ability, which means that different levels work together with higher level students helping lower level students. How does this work in a lesson? So, number one, begin with whole group instruction. Okay, so I find that everybody needs vocabulary, so I work with, say, 10 content area vocabulary words for the week. So throughout the lesson, adapt to lower and higher students and do group work. More advanced students can work independently, whereas lower proficiency students can work with you. And also end the class as a whole class. And it can be a short reflection, a written reflection for higher levels, a final sentence, a couple of words, a picture of what the students learned. So bring them in together in a group, and everybody, whatever they can do, tell me one thing that you learned today, for example. So here are a few sample activities for all 4 language domains. Okay, so listening. Dictation is a great way to gauge what your students can hear in English in general. So you can do it at the end of a class. I like to do it at the beginning of the class because my students have a lot of content area work to do after, and their attention span, poof, out the window. So first thing, I do it first thing. So we practice vocabulary. Let's say we learn vocabulary on the first day of the week, and then they have homework to find the definitions or in their words or find pictures. And then the second day, we can do dictation of sentences that contain the vocabulary words. So lower proficiency students can only listen and write down vocabulary word that they hear. And higher proficiency level students can write the whole sentence and underline the vocabulary word. So that would be one sample activity for listening that you can do in the classroom. For speaking, you can use visuals to engage students in speaking. So you can divide students in groups. Again, it can be likability or crossability, whichever way you decide to do it. And you can have them prepare to talk about a picture. So you can, if you have any textbooks with picture, if you have any magazines, I have an ebook that I have 25 speaking activities for ESL Classroom that I use. So lower proficiency students can work together to answer questions about the picture, and those questions can be prepared by you, or you can take them from the textbook. So it's a little bit more closed-ended activity. And higher proficiency level students can create a coherent story about the picture and use tier 2 vocabulary words. That is, words that are not as generic as nice, good, or happy. Very favorite words by everybody, but I think when you are improving in your language, when you learn more, you are expected to use more complex sentences and more colorful vocabulary. Moving on to reading. So reading is another area that is tricky. So adapting text to each level is a fantastic idea, but let's face it, not very realistic, okay? So one way you can help your students with reading is, I've been using the website newsella.com, where they have current high interest articles about everything from science to art to politics. And those articles are written at different Lexile levels. So that way the students can pick a level that works for them, and then the entire class can read the same text and do whatever activities you decide to do, whether answer comprehension questions or do a writing activity or a mini quiz. For lower proficiency students, pre-teach vocabulary before reading and leave it on the board for reference. For higher proficiency levels, ask them to pick out a few new words and explain them to the class. And finally, how can you adapt writing in multi-level classrooms? So same activity, different levels. For example, say your students are asked to write a paragraph. So beginners can match content vocabulary to pictures, and they can write simple sentences. Low intermediates write sentences or bulleted lists. They can also incorporate pictures. And higher proficiency students should write a paragraph with specific requirements that you have for them, whether it's grammar or vocabulary or anything else. And there you have it. I hope you found this information useful and I was able to answer some of the most nagging questions for you. If you would like materials that you can use in any of the above mentioned answer to your questions, speaking, writing for elementary students, and multi-level teaching, I have a free resource library where you can find them. All you have to do is click the link below this video and it will take you there right away. Also, I have a Facebook group where we ESL teachers share our knowledge, ask questions, and collaborate. I do Facebook Lives answering the most pressing questions and mini live presentations a couple times a month. And I would love for you to join Simply Yeva's School of ESL Teaching Facebook group. So I will link it below the video as well. All you have to do is click the link again. And finally, if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe to my channel. It will help me get discovered on YouTube, and it will help you get notified when new and informative videos come out. That is all for today. Thank you. Until next time. Bye.